Well, my two sons, who are 26 and 23, would get a big charge of being described as a rock star, even of the legislature. Let me just say what an honor and a privilege it is to be here with you. I know you've had great speakers, so I am a candidate, but not for governor, so I know you've heard from most of them. I like to tell Jerry Brown I have helped him because one of the candidates, of course, Lieutenant Governor John Garamendi, decided to stop running for governor and run for Congress. Jerry didn't think that was that funny, but let me just tell you first off about my day today, because this is the ending of what was really sort of a remarkable day. I started at the 65th anniversary of the Port Chicago explosion, and if any of you know of that event, it's really quite a remarkable and sad event, but going to it. So in the middle of World War II, in Concord at the Naval Weapons Station, 65 years ago, July 17th, there was an explosion that killed 300 sailors, most of them African American. And at that time, the military was completely segregated. This was, of course, before President Truman ordered the desegregation of the military. And actually, this event was largely credited as an impetus to that happening, which then is credited with much of the civil rights movement that followed in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So when you go, frequently, you've got these survivors who are all in their 80s and 90s. They come from all over the country, and it's just a remarkable experience to see these men who come to remember this moment in our country's history and then to realize that they were lucky enough to live through particularly this moment where we have the first African-American president in the history of the United States. And then after that, I went to an endorsement hearing at the Longshoremen's Hall in San Francisco, famous for Harry Bridges and strikes and such a big part of the labor movement on the West Coast. Then I went out and walked precincts in 107-degree weather in Walnut Creek. And we're mostly walking to Democrat and decline to state households, but every once in a while I get a Republican. And a gentleman followed me out and he said, I want to know when you're going to do something about the education system and the 50% administration costs. And I said, I don't know where you got that figure. That's not accurate. And he said, well, I know it's true. So the fun part about Republicans right now, I had a couple others early in the day, and I stopped and introduced myself, and one of them said, because they're not on the list, they're in the yard. And he said, oh, I know you. You're always doing something stupid. And I said, well, you'll have to be more specific than that, because I can't remember specifically what you might consider stupid. But those discussions, it reminded me of, unfortunately, being in the California State Senate, because when we have discussions with our Republican colleagues nowadays, it is frequently, for me, quite surreal. Because most of what we're fighting about for Democrats in California right now, and I'll talk about the budget shortly, but what we're trying to correct is an economic disaster that has happened globally, and here in California it's been particularly severe because of the housing market. But it's a reaction to 8 years of the Bush administration, and what we're trying to do is just hold on and try to keep a safety net for those people who are most impacted, which unfortunately are more and more middle income and even upper middle income people. But the poor, who the governor seems to be particularly upset at, are the most aggrieved in what we've been trying to fight to protect. So let me explain, which probably many of you already understand, but sort of how we got into this mess in terms of the budget situation in the context of most of it is responding to the Bush administration's practices, their failure to regulate Wall Street, their failure to enforce laws through the Security Exchange Commission, just like they've failed to enforce labor laws at the NLRB. And while we try to respond to that as Democrats, we are in a governance architecture, if you would, that makes it very difficult for the majority party to exercise majority power. So many of you probably know this, but it bears repeating over and over again. California is one of 3 states in the United States that require a supermajority of both houses of the legislature to pass a budget. The other 2 are Arkansas and Rhode Island. Rhode Island's roughly the size of Contra Costa County. Arkansas is half the population of the Bay Area. Both of them, fortunately, have supermajority of Democrats in both houses. We have to get 4 Republican votes in the Assembly and 2 Democratic votes in the Senate to pass any kind of revenue increases. In the last 2 weeks, we have tried to raise taxes on tobacco. We are 39th out of 50 states in what we tax tobacco. 65% of Republicans in California, when they're polled, say we should do this. We couldn't get 1 Republican vote, so it didn't go anywhere because we have to get a supermajority. We tried to pass a severance tax on oil companies. Of the 24 states that have petroleum products in their state under the ground that are being produced, pumped out of the ground by oil companies, California is the only state without an oil severance tax. Once again, we couldn't get 1 Republican vote to do that. So we are in a situation where basically we started this fiscal year 13 months ago with a $15 billion hole. In February, we had to come back in to respond to what was then a $42 billion hole for the remainder of this fiscal year that just ended and the new fiscal year that we're in now. And now we're responding to a $26 billion hole that's, again, because of the economy. So the first 2 we tried to do with a combination of cuts and revenue increases. We actually were lucky enough to get 6 Republican votes in February to get $9 billion worth of revenue increases. The biggest part is an extra cent on your sales tax that will go away in 2 years, and also resulted in all those May initiatives that the Republicans extorted us to put on the ballot, which were all defeated. So here we are in this situation where literally right now our budget staff and the governor's budget staff and the Republicans' budget staff are putting together a document that we will vote on most likely Wednesday or Thursday. And what will happen is it's the best we could get in an environment where we don't have majority power. So it will keep CalWORKs. The governor wanted to eliminate CalWORKs. It will keep healthy families. The governor wanted to eliminate healthy families. And you remember how hard we all fought to get S-chip reinstated. And one of the things this administration did, President Obama, is to do that. It would also keep Cal Grants so that poor kids can continue to have financing to go to UC and CSU. Thank you. And we've tried to protect local government, but most likely there's going to be a raid on local government that will amount to $4 billion. And then lastly, we've tried to protect education, and our education system is teetering at best. It's now 49th out of 50 states in per capita spending, and the governor, because of amazing ineptitude, we will cut about $9 billion from education out of a budget for K through 12 of about $42 billion. So what we've been negotiating the last 48 hours is a promise to repay that when the economy starts picking up, that education will be made whole first. So the governor has argued against that, but we finally compromised where he will agree to about a $9 billion refunding when the economy starts to grow, and of course nobody knows when that's going to happen. So how do you change all this? Well, we will have an initiative hopefully with the Labor Fed on next November's ballot when there's a gubernatorial election to at least ask the voters to change that supermajority requirement to a simple majority. Thank you. But that's only part of the component, because if that's all we get, then Tom McClintock, very conservative member of Congress, was a member of the legislature who supported that part. The reason he supported that is because he wants the Democratic majority to own the budget. But we still won't have control over revenues. So we only have control over 7% of all the revenues in California. The other 93% have been set by we the voters through the initiative system. So somehow we need to change the initiative system so that people can't abuse it. Somehow we have to change the initiative system, so I refer to it as a Winchester House. Since I'm in San Jose, I can use this, where we keep adding these rooms, but we don't have a concept about, and a lot of the rooms are a good idea, like Prop 98, but they don't fit the overall architecture, and lots of times there aren't rooms, there aren't hallways connecting them. So